What's going on?
It's, the dog days of summer. It's a lazy day. I'm just so laid back right now. I have to pinch myself every once in a while to make sure I'm still alive and breathing.
Well,
Just one of those days, one of those sit back, chill out, relax, and be calm because it's just too hot out there to do anything.
I'm living a living hell on Earth.
Yeah.
We escaped the hurricane, just for the record, for the year 3035. In the year 2019, Miami was spared from a massive, massive, monstrous hurricane that actually, unfortunately, ravaged the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And the pictures coming out from that are insane.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what can you say? I mean, the islands have just been devastated. Most of it's still underwater. I mean, thoughts and prayers to everybody affected, and just,
Yes.
hunker down and do what they say. This is why they say get out, you know, get to higher ground, get the heck out, take that seriously.
It's and the thing about it is, it's stalled, and it just sat there, like not even going. It was like basically stationary,
Yeah.
swirling around over these people that live in the ocean.
Yeah.
And that's. I mean, I remember I live in Florida, so I get these hurricanes are horrible. And when you're inside your house, even though this is a cinder block house, the wind's pushing up for hours and hours. You hear things smashing into your house, your roof, and all that. It's it's it feels like you're on high alert, which you are.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember Hurricane Andrew. I had to go up, and I don't. My dad made me go up on the roof to do some things, not during the hurricane, but just prior. And I actually slept through it at night, Hurricane Andrew. But where we were at, it wasn't like down south where it got really heavy duty. But Andrew was savage, and we've had a bunch of them. We've had floodings here, where water actually comes into the house, all sorts of crazy stuff, just for living in Florida. Paradise on earth, I tell you.
Yeah. I mean, but you take the good with the bad. I mean, you can run, but you can't hide. I mean, if it's not a hurricane on the eastern seaboard or down in the Gulf, it's a tornado in the middle of the country, or earthquakes and fires out here in the West. So, you can run, but you can't hide. I know they were showing on the news in the Bahamas. I don't know about storm surge if it comes ashore here in the U.S. or not, but in the Bahamas, they were showing water battering at the glass and basically flooding into the second story of a building. So, it's a heck of a lot more than just folks at ground level.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's just be careful out there, folks. And they don't tell you to evacuate just to be, mean. They they don't want to come try to rescue you. You know, they just soon everybody be gone. So,
As far as us here, we do get the hurricanes, obviously, and it's like every year. A lot of people. There was an interview of many, and there was a young girl, and well, I'm in a range within the 40s, let's say. I'm in that category that's sort of hovering into the crossing the road to the other side of 40, half, in the half. And I've experienced significant amount of hurricanes and other things. But there was an interview with a young girl. She's like a Floridian, but she's a young girl, and she says, "I've never experienced this. This is unbelievable." And for a lot of young people, this kind of thing is like first time, and it's a scary thing. And the media, they never really have. It's surprising, but they're like, it's going to hit here, it's going to hit there. They don't know in the end. It's a scary thing, man.
yeah, yeah. Especially if you've never been through something like that. And I can imagine, a youngster, has no frame of reference. Also, very few people have a frame of reference with this storm because they're talking about if there was such a thing as a Category 6, this would be it. I guess it's one of the strongest storms in recorded history.
Yeah.
I mean, winds over 200 miles an hour. I mean, come on, this is serious. It's something not to be taken lightly. So.
Well, it's so. A couple of things, but one particular thing, and by the way, I have some things lined up for you that I wanted to run past you to see how you work with these things, with these questions, and it'll be like a rapid fire type deal, and just to see I'm sure you're gonna do well, but we never know.
Yeah. All right.
But before that, I do want to mention that during this whole hurricane thing, we're always, at least I am, looking at the satellites and stuff, because you live here and it could go from 0 to 11 in a hot minute over here. The winds can ravage your area. I mean, the last hurricane we had over here, I even forget its name at this point. Our trees were down, roads were blocked, shingles, roofs were all, and even in this area. And the storm was actually out on the West Coast. I'm living on the East Coast, and this place got ravaged. So it's intense, right?
Yeah.
So during my little search, I went on and I looked for live webcams. And since it's a funny thing, but just everything connects, at least in my head, I don't know how. I was looking for live webcams to see, potential damage or whatever areas. They have street cameras that go live 24 hours. And since I'm also doing the family tree stuff, I saw that they have cameras for Spain. So I went over there and went to the town exact where my grandfather, they have a few cameras there. And I put one on, and it was right on the it's like a wharf, kind of, sort of. And there's these concrete steps that go down towards the water, and it's the Bay of Biscay. And it goes down these steps, right? And it shows the big screen, really high quality. And I look, dude, and I see a man, an old Spanish guy with his dog on the corner, and it has audio. And dude, I looked in, and the Spanish guy was old man, with the little sort of like beret thing and like the whole style. And he grabs something that looked like a bottle and throws it in the water. His little dog jumps in the water, swims, and gets it. It takes a while because the man throws it far away. And I'm looking at that, and I zoomed in on it. And I spent a half hour looking at the guy tossing the thing into the water and watching that dog bring the bottle up to him. And it sidetracked my whole hurricane thing. But I was fascinated that dog. And at one point, you see the guy is tired of it, but the dog would take the bottle and throw it himself in the water and then jump in after it. And I caught this whole thing on frickin' Alive.
Yeah,
So
wow.
That was funny.
Man, I mean, the things we do to distract ourselves, I mean, but that just indicates a short attention span, I think. I mean, it's like, oh, squirrel.
There's just so much information that one would want to take in. There's not enough time in the day. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. And when you get on something like that, man, it's real easy to get distracted. And that's why YouTube is dangerous for me, because now I know it's a great search engine. If, more than two people are interested in something, somebody has started a YouTube channel on it.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, I'll go on there and I'm looking for how to pour a concrete countertop. 11 hours later, I'm 15 minutes into a half-hour documentary about the restoration of an English castle. I'm just like, what the hell happened to my day?
It's amazing, but it's true. But you know what it is also, if you think about it, and I'm gonna tell you something. You need, in school, as far as education is concerned, if you want a broad we have so much more access today, and we have more possibilities, in my opinion, because ease of access than we ever did in the past. And I think that's not even a controversial statement. No, but honestly, to me, the internet is a better school than money can pay for at the world at large.
Yeah,
In that,
you have to be careful.
I was going to qualify it, but go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, go ahead then. I'm sorry.
My qualification for that is that um, having a structured curriculum is also highly important because it guides you through as opposed to you being sporadic, which humans tend to do. But there's value in that sporadic. In other words, traditional schooling has this itinerary and whatnot, and you pick up sporadic stuff as you go along. But in reference to the internet, it's like wherever the wind blows. I don't know. If you want doctors to operate on you, you'd probably want them to have a curriculum and
Yeah, true. And that dovetails in with what I was going to say, which is the source of the information. There's a lot of bad information on the internet. I mean, we both know that. I try like heck not to add to that bad information. And sometimes I succeed.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of bad information out there. So you got to be careful who you watch and how experienced are they. I mean, anybody with a camera, I can go down to Harbor Freight right now and buy a welder and do a how to weld video. And I've never welded an inch in my life. I've never plugged one in.
Yeah.
And, it's extremely easy to learn the wrong way to do things. So
there is missing information, and it behooves the person either by mistake and repetition, and some mistakes can be costly. So that is true. But I think in reference to if you put a baby in front of a computer from day one, with no other, with no nothing, maybe give them, let's say you put a baby in a white room, and there's like a tray that gets fed into the thing, so he has to crawl in and eat, and there's a monitor, and it has some basic explanations. Do you think that baby would make it to the point where he can learn from the computer and actually figure out language and writing and all these things?
I guess it could be done, but why you'd want to, I don't know. I mean, obviously the internet's used for education all the time. I mean, and yeah, that's a good thing. The problem is sifting through the bad information to get to the good. And it's all well intentioned, but I mean, you can guarantee, like you were talking about doctors and a set curriculum. There's 1,000 websites that you can go out to online, and I mean from good repetitive or reputable sources.
Oh, okay. See,
and remember, folks, saying the wrong word is my thing.
Well, no, the funny thing is that when you said repetitive, you hadn't completed the whole thing. So you froze for a moment, and then I filled in and said and emphasized repetitive while you came back online, and then you corrected the double entendre error.
Yeah, and that's just me. I meant reputable, but good reputable sources like and I didn't say it right that time either.
Reputable.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on today. Anyway, but good sources like the Mayo Clinic. And if I go there for, I twisted my ankle in the yard, it's guaranteed I have cancer. I mean, that's just all there is to it. You go through all the symptoms of what you think you've got cancer. Yeah. So I don't even bother going to him anymore. I go to the doctor and let him look at me.
So, sort of circling back as far as the natural disasters here, and I got this thing that I want to, a couple of fun things that I want to throw at you. Okay. And it has to do with music, but it's a very short thing. But going back on your coast, which is the West Coast of the United States, other than earthquakes, well, you do have other natural disasters that can be pretty brutal, yeah?
Oh, yeah, we get earthquakes, we get fires, we get floods. The floods are becoming fewer because they did in the 60s and 70s a lot of flood control dams on the rivers, and that helps a lot. But basically, you know, it's any more earthquakes and fires, and mainly the fires that we have to watch out for because it's so dry out here. I mean, most of the West is desert, and that's just a natural fact. And lightning happens and it ignites fires, and next thing you know, off it goes. So
Yeah.
this year has been a real mild year. The jet stream has kind of swung down from the Arctic through Canada over us, and we've gotten a few days of rain. They're calling for some more rain tomorrow. But over the last 5 years, it stops raining basically end of May, beginning of June, and it doesn't start raining again until October. But it's been very mild. I mean, the biggest fire we had here in Oregon, I think they stopped it at 19,000 acres, which is a far cry from the 200,000 acres we had the previous years.
Yeah.
So it's been a real mild summer. We've only had 2 days this year over 100 degrees. So, that's just odd. Normally, just about the entire month of July is over 100.
Yeah.
But,
Well, it's a funny thing because you guys get really hot over hundreds, and we don't necessarily. It feels like on the feels like, but on the actual, I don't know many times that it's actually gone over 100 here, and that might be due to the fact that we have, we're a peninsula, and then we have the Gulf of Mexico, I guess, breeze plus the Atlantic and Caribbean and all that. So I would assume, but that's deceiving because people would think, oh, you've got great, it's like a hop, skip, and a jump. No, it's pretty brutal here in Florida.
Well, humidity plays a major role in it too, because you guys have, world-class humidity. And I mean, yesterday the humidity here was 44%. And I was sweltering, It's usually pretty dry here, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, a couple of years ago, we had 5 straight days, temperatures over 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's just, I don't care what the humidity is, that'll just bake you.
Well, this next bit is a little random, and particularly with what we've talked about right now. So we'll just say, and the next part of our show is, but I just want to run some quotes, and these quotes are song quotes.
Okay.
There's a lot of songs out there, but I kind of did it within the rock genre, and I just did a few just to see where the conversation goes from there, because people kind of dig. We've seen in our past trends that we talk about a little bit of the rocks and roll and music and whatnots.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask away a couple, or rapid fire, just a couple of song quotes.
So this is like a lyric quiz, huh?
Yeah, just to see, can you name that band as an example?
Okay.
Or album, or whatever your, the ideal thing is that you would want to name that band. So I'm just going to hit you with a few of them. Ready?
All right.
Okay. I'm going to start off gentle. Baby, I'm Amazed.
Oh, Paul McCartney.
Say that again?
Paul McCartney and Wings, Maybe I'm Amazed.
Well, was it Paul McCartney and Wings, or just Paul McCartney?
Well, it depends on which version you, I know it was on the Wings Over America album.
Okay.
But I don't know if it was his first solo album before they put together Wings, or was it?
It was his first solo album.
It was his first album. Okay.
That first album, which I forget what it's called, but that first album had a bunch of acoustic, basic, sort of broken down, what you call, just very him with the guitar and very basic, like little drumming with like congas and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Was that Ram, or was that just Paul McCartney, the self-titled album?
It's the last song on the album. His first was Maybe I'm Amazed.
Okay.
but all the other songs on the album were basic. It's a weird thing that he did. He created an album that was very basic, like broke down to the basic thing, and at the end he hit us with "Maybe I'm Amazed," and that ended the album, which was pretty trippy.
Yeah.
So Wings, Jim Dockrell says it wasn't Wings.
It was Paul McCartney from his first solo album.
It was Paul McCartney from his first solo album. Okay, so here we go. This is going to be a difficult one for you. Okay, I'm going to just hit you with it. Ready?
Okay.
Tell me what it takes to let you go. And tell me how it is that you can sleep in the night without thinking you lost everything that was good in your life.
Aerosmith.
Damn, you're good. Damn, you're good.
I'm trying to think of the name of the tune. I can't remember the name of the. It's Aerosmith. I can't think of the name of the
Of the tune,
of the song or the Ding Dong album.
And I can't either because I'm reading off the chart. It doesn't give you the full thing. It just shows you the lyric. I know it too. That's why I'm picking it out because I know the song, but I don't know the.
Was it on Toys in the Attic?
No. I think it was on Pump.
Pump? Okay.
On the album Pump.
Okay.
But maybe you guys out there would know better and would search it and drop it in the chat because I think that'd be a cool thing, and we'll answer and we'll mention it here.
Okay.
But while we're waiting for that,
okay,
I'll hit you with this one.
All right.
It's time we stopped. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Buffalo Springfield.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the tune. I think it was part of the chorus. Yeah, what's that sound, wasn't it?
No, that's not the name. There's a name for it. And if you guys out there can type it up and tell us, because I'm just reading to see if Mark. I know it. You got it right. I just don't know who the song. Yeah,
I don't know. I don't remember the name of the. What's that sound? Everybody, look what's going down.
With the little echoey.
Yep.
How about this one?
Go ahead.
Where the grass is green and the girls are pretty.
Oh, that was oh heck.
Here, I'll help you by
Paradise City, but I get them confused. I cannot remember because this was hair metal and I wasn't into hair metal. The song was called Paradise City, but I really don't remember if it was Guns N' Roses or Motley Crue.
Jim Dockrell said that it's the name of the song is What It Takes from the Pump album.
Pump. Okay.
1989.
Score yourself 5 bonus points, Jim Dockrell.
And he hit us with GNR, which is obviously correct.
Okay. I knew Paradise City, but I'm not a hair metal dude.
All right. So we're going to continue on. And we're going to go. I can't do. It's just another tequila sunrise. This old world still looks the same.
Another frame. Yeah. The Eagles.
Yeah.
Guys, I think it was on the album Desperado. I may be wrong on that.
I think it's Desperado too. Incidentally, Harneal Media, Buffalo Springfield for what it's worth. So he got that one.
Okay, cool. Well, I knew it was Buffalo Springfield anyway. Not a band name you hear all the time, but they were pretty cool.
And in reference to it's just another tequila sunrise, it is the Eagles. And what album was it on, guys?
I think it was on Desperado. But I may be wrong.
Oh, Barry Curtis says long-haired freaky people need not apply. That's signs, everywhere there's
Everywhere the
signs.
sign. Quick, what was the name of the group?
Well, Tesla did a cover of
Oh,
Signs
man.
in the 80s, which reminded us of what was going down in the 60s, 70s, 60s. So I don't know. The original one was actually a guy, not a band.
Um,
Jim says
well,
five-man
Five
electrical
Man
band,
Electrical Band.
but that's the name of
That was the original.
no, that's the name of the album. The whole album was acoustic songs, and that was Tesla. The band
Oh,
was called Tesla, and they called it the five man, or maybe they were no, it
the
was Tesla.
Five Man Electrical Band version came out when I was a kid. So we're looking back in the late 60s or real early 70s.
Are you sure?
I'm absolutely positive.
Hold on. No.
Look up Five Man Electrical Band. Sign. Do 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 do.
You know what's funny?
What?
I got confused because back in the 80s when Tesla released their album, um, the song was titled Signs, five-man electrical band cover. And I thought that was just, and cover. I omitted the cover, and in my memory, I just thought that they were calling themselves for that acoustic album,
Uh-huh.
the five-man electrical band, because I didn't know about the original one. So there's
Yeah.
that.
Yep.
So fine. Whatever.
Great tune too. Great.
Yeah.
I liked it. Do this, don't you that? Can't you read the sign?
Yeah.
That was one of those huge songs when I was growing up. I mean, it was all over the place. You couldn't get away from it. But I was young. I liked it. I think it was like 9 or 10. So we're looking at 69, 70, maybe 71, somewhere in there. So yeah, hit me with another one. I like this.
You know you're going to have to face it. You're addicted to love.
Well, Addicted to Love, Robert Palmer.
Okay. You're gonna have to face it. You're addicted to love. Might as well.
His music videos got a little bit weird about that time, where he had the all-female band, and they
I
were all
liked it.
wearing the same outfit and kind of moving back and forth.
Man, he was kick-ass.
Yeah, Robert Palmer is good.
I mean, I totally liked his stuff. And what was the other guy that used to be in Genesis that was kind of weird too?
Oh, Peter Gabriel?
Peter Gabriel was also kind of doing some crazy videos back then.
Yeah. Sledgehammer.
That was a cool one.
Video. That was back when MTV used to actually play music and music videos. Well,
Take my hand, will make it, I swear.
oh, Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer.
That's so good. It was, the whole thing was written living on a prayer. I had to omit the living on a prayer because you would have like totally got it, but you didn't even need that.
Nope.
I thought by now you'd realize you can't hide your
lying eyes.
Eagles. You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be
The Doors, Light My Fire.
See how easy that is?
Yeah, you're throwing some real easy ones out there. These are softballs, man.
Well, I'm reading what I got here.
Okay.
This one's going to be hard because I mean, I think it's going to be hard. Take me home tonight. I don't want to let you go till you see the light.
Eddie Money, Take Me Home Tonight.
Take me home tonight. I don't want to let you go.
I saw about 6 minutes of an Eddie Money perform. Yeah. It was one of those free concerts on a military base.
Right.
It was Eddie Money opened, then Joe Walsh played, then the Doobie Brothers came out. And Eddie Money came on, and it was like, okay, he started off with 2 Tickets to Paradise because he was in Hawaii.
Right.
And he just would not end the song. And after about 7 minutes, I said, "Okay, that's enough. I'll come back later." And we split and went and did something else, and then came back just as Joe Walsh was coming on stage.
So, well, it is what it is, right?
It was what it was. It's like, okay.
Okay, here's one. Jesse is a friend. Yeah, I know he's been a good friend of mine, but
I
lately,
wish Jesse's girl, Rick Springfield.
yeah, these are easy ones, but hey,
That's okay.
it might be shockingly difficult, for some people. So they'll be surprised when they hear it. I'm wondering how many of these guys out here in our chat know the answer to these. I'm sure they do.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure they are. I'm
Okay,
sure
let's see.
they're along.
Come on, baby. Make it hurt so good. Sometimes love don't feel like it should.
Okay, now this guy changed names in the middle of his career
Mm-hmm.
twice, as a matter of fact.
He sure did.
He started out as John Cougar, then became John Cougar Mellencamp, then became John Mellencamp
Yeah.
because he let a producer talk him into getting rid of his real name, Mellencamp, because he thought, well, don't nobody want to hear that.
I like the John Cougar Mellencamp era.
Yeah, and that was on the album Uh-huh.
You know what? His albums were fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in my opinion.
Yeah.
From beginning to end, I thought that they were fun.
Some of them were, yeah. A Paper and Fire was a good album. That was one of his later ones. That was a very good album.
Now, let's go over. I'm going to do a couple more here.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a few that are repeating.
Okay.
But here we go. Again, on my own, going down the only road I've ever known.
Whitesnake.
Can you finish the lyric?
Like a drifter, I was born to walk alone.
And I've
made up my mind. I ain't wasting no more time.
Yep.
But here I go again. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, we got that one locked down, dude, for sure.
Okay. So let me back up and regroup then. I'm not much for hair metal, but that tune I do know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, it was famous. So
you don't get much more. Well, I guess you do get more hair metal than Whitesnake, because Cinderella was pretty out there too.
Oh yeah, they were awesome though, man. I
couldn't name a Cinderella song, so just kind of keep that in mind.
Gypsy Rose or Gypsy Road won't take me home. Come take me home. It's been years. I have one of their albums from that era that I had purchased, and it was pink or purple pink. The actual record, like the actual plastic, was like pink because they would do their hair. They were the extreme of like glam.
Uh-huh.
And but they rocked hard though. But they had back then, you know how it was, bandanas, not tennis bandanas, but just bandanas with the hair dropping down and all that,
Uh-huh.
So I know when you're reading comments because when I pause,
I have to.
Oh yeah. I don't want to dispel the secret of the.
It's constant. It's a constant thing. I am listening to you. I hear you.
Well, no, we talked about
trying
that.
to get that. Okay.
Hold on. No, hold on. We talked about that the other night. Remember?
Yes, we did talk about that the other night, and I'm not going to talk about that in public.
Okay.
It's nothing bad. It's just something that I don't want to admit to. Okay.
Yeah, there was a band back in the 80s called Poison. Jim Jockerell just mentioned it. By the way, Barry Curtis was in Germany back then during this whole 80s hair metal? Because purple pink, yeah.
We
So
may have to talk, Barry, because I was stationed in Germany from 88 to 92. So, and
yeah,
of course, I just froze up. So I'll repeat that. We may have to talk about that, Barry, because I was stationed in Germany from 88 to 92.
he does remember the album and the craziness of the cut because they did everything to get people to purchase, right? Oh, look how freaking different this is.
Uh-huh.
Dude, I even had talking about because I am totally a product of that time,
Right.
and these guys that were rocking with the hair metal were older than I was, so they were like marketing that to people like me, my age. So I was like that was the perfect, and frankly, it was a wonderful. They did it right, man, marketing to me because back then you're stuck in whatever town in America, and they produce these albums with all these colors and stuff, and it's rocking. And you'd go to the mall and you'd get your hands on that freaking record with the cellophane. You'd break that open, and it was just an experience. You didn't have no internet we know this, and it was just perfectly geared for kids like us.
Right.
You'd go to a friend's house, and their sisters would have like Heart or like all the girl band rockers that were cool too, but they were for girls. You know what I'm saying? Catering to.
Come on now. Heart was not catered to girls. A lot of girls liked it.
Well, go ahead. Make your statement.
But at least when I was in that, because you got to remember, Heart, Dreamboat, Annie came out. I was 16, 17, 18, somewhere in that, era. And the guys loved the Wilson sisters, Ann and Nancy. The women were all into like Peter Frampton with the long wavy hair and guys like that. They didn't care about Heart so much. Well, it was kind of the opposite of what you would think.
Look, I'll make my point, and in the long view of the lens of how it is, and we've mentioned this before back in the day, particularly in our thing, we had Megadeth. You had a sliding scale of heavy metal thunder, evil, frickin' the Kraken coming out of the frickin' ocean, witches, skulls, and then it slid down all the way to like Poison, like Jim, smoking in the bars, rum.
Well, they were Brownsville Station did the original Smoking in the Bush,
which is cool.
But they were kind of a spin-off, and I think they may be the fault of the 70s because the hair metal was kind of a spin-off of from glam rock. David Bowie, Gary Glitter, those guys. When the glam rock started to kind of die off, hair metal started taking off just a few years later. So it was kind of a spin-off of that. They just went a little bit harder than the glam rock guys did.
So look, here's what I'll say. As a kid, for me and my friends, frankly, you didn't see. In fact, okay, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this because this is totally from the 80s. I had a friend in school that gave me, in trade for some other cassette that I didn't like, I don't remember what it was, a very, like, what you call underground band called Kubla Khan.
Okay.
And they were like, and I put that on. And I listened to it, and I just thought them to be, at the time, I'd have to go back and listen to it. I might do that on YouTube, that they were a ripoff of Metallica. And really? But not as good. They were heavier, but it was gross to me. It was too much. I liked Megadeth and Anthrax, which were heavy, and Metallica, which were heavy. But I took that cassette to a friend, and my friend was, I don't want to say ashamed of, but he owned Whitesnake with Here I Go Again, the album. And he was more into the heavy metal, and he was back then. You possessed this not as heavy album, and you would try to get rid of it and the exchange was Kubla Khan for that cassette of Whitesnake.
Uh-huh.
I was happy. He was happy because I liked I Go Again on my own.
Mhm.
And he was happy because he got rid of it. And so there was all these things. But we had a sliding scale, and there were groups on the other side where people on the softer side that people didn't. The guys, kids back then were like, "Oh, that's for girls" and stuff like that.
Okay. I see what you're saying now.
Yeah,
Okay, I see what you're saying. Well, yeah, in the metal community, I guess that would be a little bit different. But yeah, when Heart came out with like Dreamboat Annie, that was one of those, you know, that was one of those albums that you had to have. But it was low on the list though, because like when I was in high school, and we're talking about sophomore, junior, senior, especially around 76, 77, 78. If you didn't have Frampton Comes Alive, Boston's debut self-titled album, Fleetwood Mac Dreams, Leonard Skinner Pronounced, you were just nobody. It was almost illegal. You had to have those 4 albums. If you didn't have those 4 albums, you had no friends. It was almost a law,
yeah. There was so much coming out in the 80s, and I'm sure the same was earlier in the 70s. I was too young to really know and care about it until the 80s. It's funny because I came right up in awareness as Casey Kasem started doing his thing on Saturdays, and you had videos attached to,
right,
and then MTV.
Yeah.
And so we had another marketing sort of tool catering to us. And well, boy, a lot of bands came out. And then there was the underground bands that didn't get shown on MTV because they were too heavy.
Right.
Like there was the whole witchcraft, or no, it was devil worship. Back then, funny enough, a lot of my friends, they thought that this heavy metal was devil worship. Whether whatever that one might think of that, there was a big push, and parents really weren't happy with kids listening to heavy metal. It was quite the increase from 50s rock and roll. But in the case of my parents, I bring home albums covers with freaking like creatures hovering over beds like Ozzy, freaking skulls, Iron Maiden, eyes popping out. It looked like total freaking like, and they were like, "Oh, okay," and they didn't care. Like to them, it's like, okay, whatever.
Well, it's not like you're outside with the sacrificing the dog or something like that. I mean, everybody has that sense of rebellion, and we've talked about that before. And yours just happened to be going with the heavier music. By that time, when those groups were really getting popular, I was getting into blues. I was still into some of the popular music, anything but disco, but I was starting to get into some of the more obscure bands, some of the Canadian bands. There are so many Canadian bands that I don't know. It's not even funny, but you get a group like Red Rider. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard Lunatic Fringe, but it's a very killer tune. I got into Deep Purple for a while, then got into, oh my gosh, I just missed their name. Golden Earring for a while, but then headed right back into the blues, and that's kind of where I've stayed ever since.
Let me tell you, it's a funny thing. And I always go back to this, and I know that you guys know, because I'm probably the younger of the crowd, more or less, kind of, sort of, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But for people listening, I remember hanging out with my friends, and that's what you would do back then. For all you people of the internet age that don't know the time prior, it's like us. It's like pirates telling us how it was back in the day. Yeah, because it's like a change of time, if that's a bad example, but back then there was no internet and none of the tools that we have today with media, and kids would actually hang out together a lot. And I remember hanging out in the backyard of some friends, and the older kid had some cash, and he said, "Hey guys, I'm going to the mall," and it was a different, "Hey, I'm going to the mall. You guys want to come? Let's go." It was a different thing. It wasn't like, "I'm thinking of possibly going to the mall, and if it wouldn't hurt your," no. "Hey, I'm going to the mall. Would you guys like to jump in the car and let's rock and roll?" And we didn't put on. Well, let's just move on. You know what? Fill in the blank. We didn't put on seatbelts. We were kind of crazy. Things that you would never do now, by the way. Because I put on my seatbelt all the time, because it would be stupid not to, incidentally. But we went to it was just a wild west of, I guess, the 80s. We'd go to the mall, and the guy would purchase. I remember him purchasing Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. We went back to the same location, and he played Guns N' Roses, and we all sat around in the round out in his backyard, poised with our hands on our chins, and listening to it as if it was a message from the prophets of rock and roll. And there was nothing else. And kids gravitated to that, which was the counterculture, if you would. And it's just such an amazing thing looking back at it now. We were looking for adventure, and rock and roll was dangerous. And so, yeah, I remember things such as that.
We did very similar. Our hangout was the bowling alley, though. And we'd go play pinball machines, take over the jukebox. And when we got tired or ran out of quarters, jumped in the car, and we were listening to Houses of the Holy or something like that. So, but it was very similar. Playing Led Zeppelin, playing Foghat, whatever. Yes, Jim Dockrell, playing Bachman Turner Overdrive. Even, more than just Not Fragile. But we had, the hangout was the bowling alley, but there were several places. If your friends weren't at the bowling alley, you knew they were over at not so much a mall. It was kind of like a strip mall. There was a little pizza place in there. We would go play video games, and we're talking old school video games. Like Asteroids, things like that, and hang out over there or shoot pool on their one and only pool table. So
that's great.
So, I mean, but it was more or less the same thing. I mean, we'd take off, just go cruise around the Bay Area and just do whatever, just get away from the house, hang out with friends, get away from the house. So. I
mean, because what would you do, other than that, all day in your house? You had to keep yourself entertained. It was either sat by the TV watching whatever the TV offered. Sometimes your friends would come over, or you'd call them. I've told you this before, or we've talked about this before, but I'm surprised how the heck we even found out where to meet. Considering today's thing, like for instance, now we contact ourselves over the internet. "Hey Mark, are you ready for the show?" Or, "Hey Mark, where are you going to be at?" "Oh, I'm going to be over here." And we do kind of that with the ease of the internet. But back then, you had to physically lift your arm up. I'm sorry, you had to lift your butt off the chair and walk your ass over to the phone, and then you had to dial or do the rotary and call and hope that they were there. There was not even beepers at that time that I'm aware of amongst friends. And somehow we'd all meet up. How the heck did that happen? How did we actually meet our friends?
We would go knock on their door, or like I said, as I got older, I knew my friends were either going to be hanging out at the bowling alley or at that pizza joint. One of the two. And if they weren't there, that usually means their parents had them out doing something,
Yeah. Or they were in trouble. I remember going over to friends' house and knocking on the door, excited. I would bike ride and drop the bike right on the floor in front of people's houses. This is everybody did that. You just tossed the and you'd run right up the steps and you'd knock on the door, and then the door would open up and it'd be the mom or dad, and sometimes they'd say, "Sorry, so and so can't come out to play. He's grounded."
Yep.
And you'd be like, "Oh crap!" You'd be like, "Oh crap!"
Somebody was in deep kimchi. When mom or dad opened the door, you knew someone was in trouble.
Oh yeah, it happened a lot.
Hi, Mrs. Johnson. Can Randy come out and play? No, Randy can't come out and play. He's busy right now. You knew he was in trouble.
Oh yeah.
He couldn't come out and play because his butt was warm, you know? So.
Good stuff, man.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But, you know, that was it. But it was a simpler time, but it was a more complex time at the same time, you know. We didn't have all the distractions and what have you, but you had to plan stuff out. You know, you couldn't just pick up a device and text your friend, want to go to a movie? Sure. What you want to go see? Let's go see this. You had to get on the to answer, you know.
Yeah, on the phone to answer, you said? What was the middle word? Okay.
Sorry, yeah, you had to get on the phone, call them, hope they answered, and then hope they'd be able to go do something. Then you had to figure out who was going to drive, you know. And you know, it was more complex to get to something, but there were fewer things to get to, I guess I'd have to say.
Yeah, there were areas that my parents said you can't go there. We had full reign of Sweetwater within at depending on the time, you know, from early childhood on, there was like a circumference of where you could travel. And I remember crossing those boundaries over and over again. We would end up in the mall on foot, which was like a couple of miles away as kids. And we'd walk the darn mall. We were so proud that we made it across the highways and this and that. Things that if you hear about, that's news today. And 5 kids walked from their home to the mall.
That's it.
You know what I'm saying, dude?
Yeah. Oh, well, you know, and I live in a pretty small town, so some pretty goofy, pretty benign stories make the news here. But still, it would be news. You know, 5 kids crossed Interstate 5 today to go to the grocery store. You know, that would be news here. Number 1, 5 kids got together. Number 2, they crossed the highway. Number 3, they actually walked somewhere, you know, and didn't wait for somebody to give them a ride. But
now, did you ever skip school?
Oh, constantly.
Oh, you were
to this day, I do not know how I made it into high school because I basically didn't have an 8th grade. We moved, and
you were a skipper.
Well, yeah, because they didn't know me. Nobody knew me.
Do you remember? I don't want to cut you off, but do you remember that there was an official name, like amongst kids? Oh, they're skippers. Oh, they're skipping. They're gonna skip. They're gonna skip. That was here. That's how it was here. But go ahead.
I was never called a skipper, but I did all the time. Basically, we moved at the beginning of my 8th grade. So I was at one junior high school. We moved. My father didn't want me to go to the junior high school closer to home. So he got me into another junior high school, which was twice the walk. You know, here, I'll get you a bicycle. So he got me a 10-speed. And that was just basically licensed to go wherever the heck I wanted because they put me down, they registered me. Okay, fine. And I went 2 days. And then I didn't want to go anymore.
Right.
Now,
why would you?
My dad worked nights, so he was at home in bed all day long. So I would just go do whatever until about 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then come home. Dad was asleep, you know, and I'd go into my room and I'd read or do whatever, put on the headphones, listen to music, what have you.
You were such a vandal.
My mother was at work, and, you know, she got home at 5, 6 o'clock. So, you know, whatever. So then they basically kicked me out of that school because it was an interdistrict transfer and I wasn't going, which was news to my father. And they registered me in the junior high that was close to home. And I never went to any of my classes. I never went home.
Mark, I didn't know you were that much of a rebel like that,
So
dude.
to this day, I do not know how I got into ninth grade.
You
All I
were-
know is I registered at the high school in ninth grade, and I did go to. We had what was called modular scheduling. It was kind of sort of like a college in that you would have this math class would go from this time to this time. Then the English class you're signed up for wouldn't be for a half hour. So you had a half hour open time there and you'd go do whatever you wanted. We'd go hang out at the donut shop, across the street, or go wherever and just be back to class. But it felt more adult than sitting in class in a desk in a row, raise your hand to do anything. It felt more adult. And I did go to, I don't think I missed a day in high school.
Well, that made up for the junior high
But
situation.
junior high, I mean, I still to this day don't know how I got out of it. I guess they just went ahead and passed me to ninth grade, so they wouldn't have to deal with me no more.
You were more of a rebel than I was because you did a whole semester just about.
A whole year. My 8th grade, I maybe went to school for 2 weeks.
Holy smokes. Because I did the occasional day, like friends would get together. Hey, so and so is gonna skip today, and we're gonna be going. So that's all they'd say, and then you'd be, oh, okay. So I know to meet them at this location, so we could haul ass and get out of school. Like there was little. Oh, we were, but never did we have the ability to. We would have gotten busted if it was a continual.
Oh yeah, I just split. I didn't hook up with anybody. I never asked a friend to skip with me or nothing like that. I just didn't go. In fact, the 2 junior highs I went to after we moved, I didn't have any friends at those schools. So I just went,
Now, you can't skip today as easily because they have surfaced air to ground observation satellite radars, scramblers, and all sorts of stuff to detect. I think that they even inject little pills with like RFID chips into your
just about
mac and cheese when you're at school. So if you can't escape, but back then, oh man, honestly, we would head into rock and roll / head shops, like record / head shop / like what do you call incense shops?
Mm-hmm.
And
I know.
We'd hang out in those and look at the posters with all the cool neon, or not neon, but black light. They'd have like a section and the whole place. We'd go there. We'd go to the mall. Hell, we would figure out ways. There was abandoned areas or wooded areas, believe it or not, here in Sweetwater, the western edge of Miami back then, and we'd go into those. Not wooded, like let's say, I don't know, the Blue Ridge, but it was like a little wooded. So we had places to hide out. Today, forget it.
Yeah, we had little fishing creeks and a public park that had a lake in it, a little fishing pond in it. And I'd go there. I had a rod and reel stashed out in the backyard, and I could grab it, jump on my bike, and go whenever I wanted to go. But basically, when I skipped school, most of the time I went back home because, like I said, I was basically alone. My father's in there asleep. He had to work that night.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't call the house because they didn't know me. It was like, well, this guy, never showed up. So,
Well, I mean, you were dangerous doing that, dude. I don't know. You got away with it.
No, I didn't get away with it. I got tore up a couple times. I got caught, but I didn't care. I was a little Adam Henry. The right people know exactly what that means.
I've told it before, but I'll say it in quick succession. My biggest burn from skipping was one day a bunch of us were going to get together, guys, girls. It was like a little grouping, and it was going to be awesome. And it was. Well, it was stupid now thinking back because we didn't do anything but walk around. But I left my house, my mom, goodbye, and I walked down the canal to where we go to pick up the bus, and I walked, and there used to be pine trees along the canal, no more, and you'd had all the little pine needles on the floor, on the ground, that would bundle up around the trunks of the trees. I took my book bag, buried it underneath that, and took off. Spent the whole day going, around the city and whatnot.
Yeah.
End of the day, I said, okay, guys, and everybody, it's time to go. I go back to that tree, and I start digging off those pine, needles. My book bag's missing.
Whoop.
I later found out that a lady across the street, because houses lined the canal, saw a bunch of kids burying their book bags. And when all the kids left, and by the way, our book bags had little name tags on them back then, because in case they got lost, I should have pulled mine. Dang. She returned them to our parents.
Oh.
I went back to that pine and I didn't find it. I didn't know that information. So I said somebody just stole it. I'm screwed, but whatever. I'm walking home, and I'm walking home like, well, I lost my book bag, but okay, I'm okay so far. And as I'm making my way across the street, I see my house across the street. My mom opens the door, and she's standing in the front porch, and she says from across the street, "Did you have a good day at school today, son?" And I'm walking, and my feet start. Have you ever felt like you're on like slow-mo?
Uh-huh.
Kind of like the internet is happening now in a way. I started slow-moing, and I said, "Oh yeah, Mom, it was okay." And she says, "Really?" And I said, "Oh yeah, it was okay." And I was like, "Does she know?" Like, remember, I think I'm really astute and a wise guy. She pulls out the freaking backpack, and she says, "You left this." Oh, I was so busted. I was puckered up with fear. So that happened.
Yeah, I kind of lucked out because from 7th grade on, every school I went to had lockers, and all your books stayed at school. They never left school grounds. So I never got popped that way. I just got caught. I got spotted downtown or something like that. And someone would call my mother or my father. "Oh, I saw Mark down at the store the other day doing yada, yada, yada." "Oh, you were there, not in school again, huh?" "What?" So what can you say?
I chalk it up, Mark, to the equivalent of what we see on those batched out videos on YouTube where it says fail, fail. Yeah. We failed a lot, at least on my. Yeah. We thought we could get one over on our folks and older adults. They knew just by looking at us everything and then some, and yet we had the gall or inexperience to think we had one over on them.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing about it. We didn't get away with it because our parents didn't get away with it. Right. And they didn't get away with it because their parents didn't get away with it. We and that's what I tried to impress on my kids. You can't invent anything. It's been tried. It's been done. Now you've got different ways of doing it. You can text your friend and make arrangements that way. But you're still going to have to deal with people, and you're still going to have to deal with being spotted someplace where you're not supposed to be, or not being where you are supposed to be. Yeah. It's, you'll get away with it. Eventually you will get caught.
Barry. Oh, I'm sorry. No, Barry says, does anyone remember having to wrap your own books and with those brown paper? So you could do the brown paper, or you could do the fancy thing. I think schools also sold like cool looking little designs that you could choose, or you could go to the store. But yeah, brown, wrap it, and you're good to go.
Everybody covered their books. I didn't bother with mine. I did in like sixth grade. I put book covers on and stuff like that, so you could write on them basically. But that was about it. I never have been a person to really follow the trend, and I don't know why.
You're a rebel.
In some things I do, and other things I don't. I mean, if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't.
Well, you do have that cultural infidelity that you do that. I don't know if you've grown into that, but you are rebellious with cultural.
Yeah, I call myself a cultural infidel because basically I just don't follow it. I mean, there are some things that I do. I mean, I watched all the Star Wars movies and I still like them. The original 3. The others, I don't think I've seen any of the new ones.
I can't stand them, honestly. And I don't know if we can chalk it up more to it's of the time that you were in. I think a lot of it does have to do with one's connection to early spring and the things you did.
Yeah,
I
maybe
think it does.
I never got interested in Star Trek. I saw 1 or 2 episodes. It was okay. I did like Lost in Space, but I never got into Star Trek. I never got into a lot of the things that everybody was into when, I never bought a pet rock. I never bought a Rubik's Cube. I just didn't really care about that kind of stuff.
I had a Rubik's Cube. You didn't have a Chia Pet?
Nope.
You did not have a Chia Pet. Did you have a Slinky?
Oh, yeah. I've had several Slinkies.
Did you have a Mr. Potato Head?
No, I had an Etch-a-Sketch.
Okay.
I never had a Mr. Potato Head. Didn't want one.
How about a Light Bright?
Oh, yeah. Several, because we'd lose the pegs. But yeah, Light Bright, Etch-a-Sketch. Oh my God. I did see. Now, we've talked about this before. Probably one of the most dangerous toys you could give to a kid. I was 6 years old. And if it wasn't creepy crawlers, it was called the Thing Maker.
Okay.
But you made creepy crawlers with the Thing Maker. And basically what it was a hot plate.
Okay.
With cast aluminum molds, and you had a little wire that you would stick down into a slot to pick up these molds. And you pour this plastic goop into these molds that look like insects or what have you. And you pour it in there and you'd set it on that hot plate and it would heat up that aluminum mold too. And we're talking, a couple 100 degrees here.
Yeah.
and you're 6, playing with this thing. I mean, my grandfather came over one time. He bought a bunch of goop and he got out my Thing Maker and he sat there and made fishing lures with them, put hooks in them just as they were almost done and everything. And he made a bunch of fishing lures with them. And it worked for that. But giving something like that to a kid that could very easily start a fire or just burn the stuffings out of you.
Jim Dockrell mentioned also Hot Wheels. We loved Hot Wheels. I had that. There was like a plastic sort of like track that you could loop, and it had harder plastic, parts that would connect them.
Yep.
And you could just, launch your car, and it would do the loop de loop. And man, that was so. And you know what? You'd go to the discount, like here in Miami. I think it's kind of like the same all over the place. You'd have your little discount stores that had a section for toys apart from pots and pans and knives, kind of like you'd see in whatever discount store today, but there was a certain vibe to it. And you'd go in and they would have Hot Wheels, and some of them actually had the inside of the Hot Wheels had details. And you could, and it was like, oh my goodness, man. There was a Hot Wheels, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm drawing this from like the past and I can't quite, that had like a little seeing eye glass that you could put your eye to, and and you could look into it, and it had an image or something. I remember something to that effect. Do you remember anything like that?
remember that one. I got my first set Hot Wheels, the bright orange track that was good for smacking your brother with once until Dad took it away from me and smacked me with it. And it's like, yeah, that hurts. I need to quit it. Um, but yeah, I got mine in 60. Oh my gosh, I was like 6 years old. So we're looking at 67, 68, 6 or 7 years old. And I just loved them. Loved my damn Hot Wheels. My favorite, I had um, it was a green metallic GTO. That was the fastest car I had. I mean, that thing was great. And I don't know whatever happened to it. The other one was the Aurora AFX HO track with the HO cars. I loved those things. I don't know how many sets I bought and broke and just basically totaled because I was rough on toys. But I loved those things.
There's a whole trend now on YouTube, and sure you can find everything, but there's a lot of trend where you
Mhm.
see grown men purchasing old school toys off of eBay and whatnot, and then they unbox them and talk about them, and they're quite enjoyable for me videos.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of the restoration thing has really bitten hard on YouTube, and there's a lot of channels that they do restorations of tools and what have you. But there's a couple that have gone on to do like Tonka trucks. They're buying these old Tonka trucks or these toys, Buddy L toys or whatever, at yard sales and what have you. Take them apart, clean up all the plastic parts as well as they can, strip and repaint the bodies and put new decals on it and everything. You got a brand new 1960s Tonka truck. And it's actually pretty cool. I see Steve from Harneo Media says he was into Tyco slot cars. I didn't like Tyco. I liked the Aurora AFX. A couple of my friends had a Tyco set, but I always preferred the Aurora AFX.
Which one? Which ones were the ones that you'd lay on the track and you had your controller and it ran on a track that would hook? Or wait, it had magnetic. The track was magnetic or something. It had some strips, metals, and you put the car or whatnot, and you could control it.
That
Um,
if
yeah,
that went in between the pieces of track when you put it together, I
I
I
can't
think that
picture.
was
It was the Tyco.
Tyco. The Aurora, you put two pieces together and they had little hooks on the edges,
Okay,
and you clicked them together. They just snapped together. They didn't have any clips.
I had a few different throughout, but it was so long ago that I can't quite picture, man. But yeah, I remember these things. We would
Wish I
have
had.
lots. Oh man, loads of fun, right? I don't
Oh
know if
yeah.
it. I don't know if it would feel as dramatic now as back then. How about just regular train sets? You know?
I never got into the trains. I had a cousin who was, and it was cool and everything. But I was always a car guy more than any kind of a train guy or airplane guy. But if I went over to his house, yeah, we'd play around with his trains. But I just never wanted a set of my own. I was into slot cars, and I mean, he had a pretty elaborate set. I mean, I would. My dad went out and got me a sheet of plywood, and we built a course with that HO scale AFX track on that piece of plywood. And he rigged it up with pulleys so we could pull it up into the rafters, tie it off, and he could get the car into the garage. But other than that, put down a couple of sawhorses, drop the track down, and we'd be out there in the garage, you know, just playing around with the HO cars. Because I mean, all of my friends in the neighborhood had them too. And you had the little controller, and you're sitting there zipping around with a little plastic guardrail, that you clipped onto the edge of the track. Just man, I had it. I had
Now,
it. It was
now
great.
I want to since we're talking about back then toys and this and that, but I want to sort of throw out a strange convergence of different popular cultural themes that occurred also in the early 80s, early to mid 80s, frankly all the whole of the 80s. So you had the rock and roll heavy metal contingency, which stipulated that, in not so many words because it's not like it was written down in canon, but you know, you had a certain rock and roll look. You had rock and roll shirts, bands. You might have had the blue jean jackets with the patches. You wore jeans, and either boots or sneakers. A lot of people wore boots. You know, there's no horseback riding here, but we had boots. That's not necessarily a prerequisite, but then rap came in, and you would think, especially from the rock community, that there would be little convergence of the two, which later we saw like Aerosmith doing a record with the Rum DMC.
Yeah.
And so you would find back in the day kids on the corners breakdancing with rock shirts, a complete melding of different cultural things. I got to see that. They would have rock shirts listening to rap, but at one point it got divisive. You either like rock, or there were actual lines drawn, and I don't know if I'm the only one that can. I'm sure I'm not the only one. A lot of people remember that there were lines drawn. You're a rock, kind of like the disco rock divergence.
It was very much, a serious line drawn. The disco folks, you could tell them a mile away because they dressed the part. And then the rockers. Now, like I said, I was never trendy. I've always worn blue jeans and t-shirts. I used to wear engineer boots. They called them back then. And they were just a square-toed boot with a very short heel, but they had little straps that came out. One strap went around the back of the heel, and there was a chrome ring, and another strap, two straps around and then another strap around the front. So, and that was down around the ankle, way down low. I wore engineer boots. I wore Carolina logging boots, and I wore tennis shoes, just depending upon what I was doing. When I was working, it was Carolina logging boots. And, but other than that, that's about as trendy as I ever got. I never wore a cowboy hat. I didn't wear a baseball cap until I hit my 40s. I just kind of did my own thing.
I'll tell you this, Mark, and it's a funny thing. Another thing that happened during at least my time was that we had the advent of Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah.
And very quickly you saw the girls in school all Cyndi Lauper clones. Everywhere you'd look, the hair was tossed. Everywhere there was Cyndi Lauper's, even the staff ladies, everybody went Cyndi Lauper, dude. It was, well, you see it in movies like that, The Breakfast Club, and so on. You see it there.
Yeah, we didn't do much better. We had Farrah Fawcett. You remember Farrah Fawcett on Charlie's Angels? Her hair. Women in their 60s were walking around with their hair parted in the middle and feathered back. Highly, highly, highly hairsprayed. It's 30-mile-an-hour wind and not a hair is moving. That's not nature. They almost helmet head, like 30 coats of hand rubbed lacquer, that kind of thing. So we didn't do much better than that. But you talk about t-shirts with the rock and roll things. I have had 2 rock and roll t-shirts in my life that I can think of, and I still have one of them. One of them was a t-shirt my daughter got me for, I don't remember if it was my birthday or Father's Day, had Stevie Ray Vaughan on the front of it. And I wore that. I liked that shirt. And the other one is, I still have it. It's Monsters of Rock 1992 from when we were stationed over in Germany.
Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah,
T-shirt.
dude, you would see. I had Metallica shirts. I had I can't remember all the shirts, but I had rocker shirt after rocker shirt, and if you didn't wear rocker shirt, you were wearing some plain shirt, like a white shirt. There was, it's a funny. I'll say this, at least for me, and I think that this applied to a lot of people. But there was a thing about a return to the '60s in the '80s in certain ways, like trends. So you'd see a lot of kids also with like the greaser type vibe, where they like roll up their. I would do it. I'd roll up my short sleeves and bundle them, and if we were smokers, which we'd put the cigarette and we'd roll it there, and
Wow.
it's just like we were doing all that stuff, man.
But that was 50s.
50s, right?
That was 50s. That wasn't even 60s.
No, I said 50s. There was a return. Okay. There was a return to. I think I said. There was a return in certain ways, and I think it was due to the movies that we saw. Because in the 80s, there was a lot of stuff like The Outsiders and whatnot, and a lot of people took note of that. It was a weird thing, but there was a lot of cultural sort of, you had the rap, you had this, you had that, plus movies, and it was all coming. I guess that goes on through every decade, but boy, it was like a blender, of cultural popular things and all that.
I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area in the 1960s. The Berkeley riots were just up the road from me. The Summer of Love was across the bay in Golden Gate Park, Haight-Ashbury. I mean, so there was music taking off in all directions. And San Francisco at the time was the mecca of counterculture and up-and-coming rock and roll. I mean, you had Quicksilver Messenger Service and Jefferson Airplane and all of these other bands coming out of San Francisco from out of nowhere. Creedence Clearwater Revival from over in Oakland. And so, I mean, as far as any kind of trend is concerned, tie-dye was there for a little while. Bell-bottom pants were there for a little while, but that came and went very quickly. And then it got into the old holy blue jeans, which is what I normally wore anyway. And, girls wearing peasant blouses and the guys with, just a plain white t-shirt and bell bottoms. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, the wide black belt with all the grommets and holes all over the ding dong thing. And boots. And if I've ever set any kind of a trend, or not set a trend, but followed any kind of a trend, that look is kind of sort of what I went with. I had black or gray or white t-shirts, blue jeans, boots, and tennis shoes. Now, I haven't owned a pair of boots other than combat boots in probably
how long?
Probably 30 years. But it was just kind of that whole do what you want to do, let it all hang out vibe that kind of stuck with us. And I've been that way ever since. I never did the Speedo bathing suit or the parachute pants or anything like that.
Well, you were already past that, but I'm sad to say that in the late 80s I did.
Oh man,
I'm sorry to say. Well, yeah,
I get it. When you're a kid, you got to follow the trend. I get it.
I just, I mean, there was a store here in Sweetwater, and they had the parachute. It was like, it's almost like it's like cutting some sheets up and just tying them together. It was horrible. And even worse than that, the one that I liked had like dots on it, so it looked like it was just a clown suit. And I begged my mom, could I? And she gave me some money, and I went down to the store here in Sweetwater because I begged, and she did. And I bought them and I brought them home. And then I remember putting them on and walking out on the street. This is a cringe thing, and I'm walking and stuff around town, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. I felt like a clown. I never wore those things again, dude. I swear that's one of those things. That's one of those things, man. And I'm gonna admit it. I'll admit it. That's I couldn't even bring that to school. It's how ridiculous that was.
Well, the dumbest, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I cannot criticize any kind of anybody else's decade when mine started with Watergate and ended with disco, because the stupidest thing about the 70s was the way we dressed. I never got into it. I never got into the disco scene, but I knew too many people that did. White guys with red hair and freckles named Duffy sporting afros with the polyester shirt unbuttoned down to the fourth button with 2 or 3 chains and the white slacks and 4-inch platform shoes. And it just looked dumber than dirt. It really did. I couldn't get into it. Like, are you kidding me?
Looking back, you'd be safe as a guy throughout the past century, if you just wore jeans and a regular old shirt, pick a solid color, keep it tidy, wear it outside your pants or tucked in, put on some some regular, you're good to go. But the sliding scale of that was insane throughout the decades. Insane.
Yeah, it was very insane. But I also have to say, I do have guilty pleasures, and I don't like that term. I am a sucker for merch.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for merch. If somebody has a t-shirt for sale, I will eventually get around to getting it. Just about everything I wear anymore is a t-shirt with somebody's logo on it.
Oh, yeah.
That's Mike Montgomery, Modern Builds. I got that when he first started selling t-shirts. I've got a closet full of t-shirts, and it's all merch from other makers or other YouTubers or what have you, and from stores here locally, shops here locally. So, I'll happily walk around with somebody else's advertising on my chest.
I remember Jordache jeans. Jim Dockrell is mentioning a few things. I remember those jeans. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's man. No.
So I think we've done a good job this evening reminiscing.
Yeah, I think so too. There's some things there that bring back fond memories. There's some things there that I wish would just go away and fade away forever. But all in all, man, I don't know. I think that's half of the fun of doing this podcast, is to kind of go back and think about things that I haven't thought about in so long it's not even funny.
Yeah, and be able to share those with people and realize, because if you look at what folks have been writing, how many similarities across the spectrum, no matter how far or close. I've come to the realization that fashion really spreads like a plague, for good or ill.
It did. I mean, now for those of you listening on the podcast.
Yeah.
We record these live. I froze up. I apologize for that.
Not a problem.
Again, for those of you listening on the podcast, we record these live on YouTube on Tuesday nights, and we have a YouTube live chat going off on the side here. And every time we have mentioned something, I mean, we've got people talking about the boots that they used to wear, and who's wearing Crocs. You guys got to stop it. No, Crocs are a sentence, man. You're sentenced to wear Crocs. Stop it. Get you some flip-flops like normal people.
Crocs are so 2015,
You know what? You know what Crocs remind me of? You know that stuff called Plastidip that you dip tool handles in?
Yeah,
You just stuck your foot in a vat of that. That's
but
what
you're
Croc to me.
but you're a cultural infidel, so we know that it's gonna be. Oh, by the way, I did have man, we missed out on a few things because I did have other things to mention, but we're gonna have to see. We have a lot of going back and reminiscing stuff, and also current conversations of what's happening nowadays, and just about everything to do with music, really, particularly in the rock and roll,
Mu- Music,
genre.
music, pop culture, television, theater, movies, what have you. Occasionally we get off into other subjects, but history, what have you. But my point in mentioning the live chat is if you want to come join the fun, hit us up on our YouTube channel, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on YouTube. We record usually 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, Tuesday evenings. Hit us up on YouTube, and we also have a website, don't we?
Well, if you type in trampled underfoot podcast.com, you could check out our latest episodes there as well. And we have a button that can take you to our past episodes, and you just hit the Wayback Machine. See, we're all themed about, going back, reminiscing, and just really cool stuff, toys, music, and so on. And you can check out those past episodes. We have a lot of fun doing those. So that's trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You could also send us a message either on our website or on our Facebook page by the same name, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. And please tell us about, what you'd like us to talk about, suggest any thoughts for better or worse, and help us get this thing pushed out to more people. We'd appreciate it. And I
Yep.
think that covers my bit.
That covers my bit as well. Yeah, share the podcast with a friend. If you know somebody who might enjoy listening in or participating over here in the live chat on Tuesday evenings, share it with a friend. But I'd like to say thanks to everybody for joining us this evening.
We had a
And
good time.
yep, very good time. Y'all take care.